small things like this, or bigger things for that matter, but it's other people's experiences. It's other people's kind of what they've actually done.
If you don't do this, you do this, and then everyone else goes, oh, well, actually, that sounds like a really good idea, but could you just change it to do this? And generally speaking, yeah, you guys will do, or at least you'll give them the foundation to then go and make that change themselves, so that can then be added to the code and then make that code better. That's what
what's the fun in taking something that's already there? It's much more fun to do it yourself and try to understand it. I love those kind of projects. Really cool.
He's going to do it on Raspberry Pi next.
Actually, I've ordered a Nano to run.
Sure.
But the thing is, there is a simple command you can run on an ESXi host to start a VM without registering it in the inventory.
Yeah, that's bonkers.
But let's be honest, how many customers or ESXi managers are going to pair their list of VMs in their vCenter with the output from a command line command utility on one of the hosts and see if there's a mismatch?
Hello again, and welcome to this podcast. Today, we are joined again by Rutger. Hello, Rutger. Thanks very much for coming with us again.
Hi there. Thank you.
Don't sound like you're enjoying yourself too much. It's fine. It's good. Okay. And of course, Christian. So today, you guys have just come back from VMworld Barcelona or VM Explore Barcelona. Just showing my age. And Rutger came from Vegas as well back in August as well. But yeah, quite an experience, I would wager. That's just Vegas, not even the conference. So this time, what we thought we'd cover is essentially something I very much enjoyed with regard to my time playing with conferences, is the technical sessions. And we're lucky enough that you guys have both done technical sessions at the conferences this year. So Christian, can I ask you to start for us? And what did you present as part of a technical session for people at the conference this year?
Yeah, I had a couple. One of them was basically... it was called "How I Went Nuts with PowerCLI."
Well, I think we've all used PowerCLI, so to a certain extent, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, the nuts part of it is actually playing with network UPS tools, which is basically shortened down to nut. So it's a play on words, but basically that was a session where I walked through how I started with building a small PowerShell or PowerCLI to shut down my home lab in case of a UPS event, right? But as I normally do, I kind of fell down a rabbit hole. So I built this 200-line PowerCLI that does basically everything. Turns off AJ, turns off DRS, turns off VCL, puts the VCLS VMs into retreat mode, maintenance mode, the host shuts them down, records where the vCenter is and shuts down that host last, and everything. Basically built out the entire workflow, which was fun.
Yeah.
But then I kind of figured, okay, what else can I do with this? I want to be able to call that PowerCLI script from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So how do I do that? So I found a solution called Pod, which basically allows me to build a REST API in PowerShell.
Okay.
So I built a solution that basically... It basically scans the file system for endpoint scripts, and then it exposes those as REST APIs with API-based token-based authentication on it. So I can basically call all of the scripts I put into that solution via curl or whatever from wherever I am, right? Right now, it's the shutdown thing. But then I figured, okay, how can I do even more with this? So I figured, why not build a container that contains all of my code. So then I started playing with GitHub and automations there. So basically, if I tag a new release of my PowerCLI, I get a pre-built Docker container that I can run anywhere that has all of that PowerCLI code in it.
Okay. I'm not sure.
And then I can call that from nut.
Yeah.
So basically, how I went nuts with PowerCLI is a pretty decent name for it.
The one thing that's sticking in my head, though, at this point, I'm sure you're here as well with this one, Rutger. You're married, right, Christian?
Mm-hmm.
I used to be. No, I am.
What you thought, I'll just take a Saturday that turned into a Sunday and then an entire working week to just sort of try and run through this sort of stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. And then I built a presentation around it, how I fell down that rabbit hole of building things. I'm no developer. I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's been a lot of fun doing it and figuring out how it works. And now it's kind of evolved into a framework of running PowerCLI scripts via REST API, which is kind of what the end product here is. Available on GitHub. Anyone can download it, do whatever they want with it, and criticize my incredibly poor PowerCLI skills.
I'm going to say, I hope you documented your code. That sort of stuff.
It is. It is.
Okay. The first of all, I'm going to bring you up on something. I'm astounded that you needed to do this for starters, because back in the day, I've just looked up my code. 16th of September 2011. I wrote a UPS shutdown control script using PowerShell, running on ESX that detected APCs, UPS calling it, and then going through and looking at all the resource pools. The critical resource pool was considered most important, so those VMs were shut down first, just in case you run out of power when you weren't expecting to. I did that back in 2012. So it was like 14 years or. Why hasn't this been built into UPS software by now? And why hasn't VMware built this into VMware?
It has been built into UPS software, but this was for my home lab, right? I didn't want to buy a UPS that also had a network card, right?
Right, okay. So you've got a UPS, but not one with a network card. 4 small
Dell Optiplex desktop machines as my home lab, right? And I needed it to shut down my Synology storage and stuff like that. So I built this basically because the only way I can interface with that UPS is via a USB connection.
Yeah.
So I exposed the USB connection to a VM that is running the NUT software, Network UPS Tools software, that can listen for UPS events on the USB port.
Yep.
If I had a networking solution for this, well, then I could use a plugin in vCenter and have everything done for me.
Good.
But
thank heavens that exists.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, I do agree.
Exactly.
Yeah. Go on, Rutger. What have you? Have you tinkered with this sort of stuff?
And not exactly this kind of stuff, but I've tinkered with a lot of other stuff. I think it's and like Christian said, it's what's the fun in taking something that's already there. It's much more fun to do it yourself and try to understand it. I think it's. I love those kind of projects. Really cool. So this was for your home lab, Christian, or you? Yeah. Okay, nice.
He's going to do it on Raspberry Pi next. That sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Actually, I've ordered a Nano to run.
Sure.
That's going to run the NUT part of it because I don't want to have a dependency on a VM in the environment where I actually shut it down. So I'm going to actually run that on a Raspberry.
So still married. Still married.
Still. For 23 years now. So, she must have gone mad a long time ago.
I'm going to say she's a very understanding lady, to be honest. That's a genius.
Yeah, I had a second session as well. We could talk about that later.
I was going to say, let's finish that one off, though. How was this received? Because obviously you're standing up on a stage presenting this to a load of people. Yeah. How did that go down? Just have they? I mean, I'm assuming people share in this situation. So did you get any other people say, "Oh, I did this, I did this, I did this"?
Yeah, and I also got questions of how do you handle specific things, and I also had people come up to me afterwards, explaining how I could use things like HashiCorp Vault to store my username credentials in the PowerCLI scripts to ensure that you don't have any credential leaks in my own home lab. So yeah, that was I got a bunch of questions. I got a bunch of suggestions as well, how things could have been improved. This was basically a 45-minute session of me explaining how nerdy you can be.
Yeah, nice.
And how you go from 5 lines of PowerShell code to a fully fledged REST API thing. So based on the kind of ratings and feedback I got, it was pretty well, pretty well received. So
properly geeking out.
But I mean, the people who show up on that session probably had an idea what this was about. I don't think the general masses would have seen this one as very interesting, but it was a lot of fun, though.
Yeah.
We've not talked about it, but you do love your home automation, don't you? But it's not I'm still waiting to do a session on that, actually, because I know nothing about home automation, but you love that sort of stuff, don't you?
Yeah, I also have this UPS connected into my Home Assistant system, so I get reporting from that as well. So
of course,
everything's integrated. Yeah.
Do you have that, Luca? Do you do home automation as well? Is it just me?
No, I have it. It's just more that I buy I'm the kind of home automation guy that buys the. I'm not building it that much myself. I'm buying the solutions that are there. So it's a lot is based on HomeKit and Apple stuff, and I just want something that works. I have teenagers here, and I can't take the responsibility of making sure that the lights go on. I just want that to work all the time. So I just feel like maybe later on when they moved out, I can start mixing around with home automation on another level. I think it's very it's very interesting. It's a very interesting area. So I would love to hear more about that, Christian.
Are you looking for ways to try and force your kids to move out so you can get onto this? Is that?
No, not there yet. We're not there yet.
Okay,
but, I also had one session, and I did it both in Vegas and in Barcelona. And talking about crazy projects and going into a rabbit hole. I did that about 5 years ago with a buddy of mine who's living in the US, and we built a scripted or automated way for deploying VMware nested environments. So people that are looking for spinning up lab environments to quickly test out something in vSphere or NSX or in vSAN, they can use those scripts to get it up and running within about an hour, and then get their hands dirty and play around with the VMware technology. So it's not like an environment where you would run applications, of course, but it's just to get kind of acquainted with the VMware products. Started this 5 years ago.
So just to clarify then, so you mean when you say nested, so essentially you get maybe a piece of ESX hardware, a piece of physical hardware that you run ESX on, but then within that ESX you then run virtual machines that run ESX.
Exactly.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
So you can create clusters within a single piece of hardware.
Yeah. In there you can go crazy. You can build all kind of very advanced topologies, with multiple sites, fictional, of course, but it's kind of a nice way to, when you're working with customers and you're faced with different designs, it's kind of nice to be able to just spin up something and kind of mimic the customer's environment, so you can try out things very easily. If it doesn't work, okay, we'll blow away the lab or the environment and we'll spin up a new one. And this is nothing new. I mean, there are many solutions like that here. I mean, I think William Lambs, who is a pretty known guy, he has a lot of things around this as well. So it's not, I don't think what we have is better or anything. It's just like Christian. I think it's funny to do it yourself, build it yourself, see if you can learn something. 5 years ago, I wanted to learn more about Ansible. So this was kind of the reason why we chose Ansible to do this all. And you learn very much just by doing it yourself. So
and Ansible is, I mean, just for those who don't know, but Ansible essentially is like an automation tool. It allows you to sort of set targets and scripts and that sort of stuff based upon actions and triggers.
Yeah, exactly.
Desired state management, really.
Desired state management. Ooh, cool. That's a nice wording. Sorry, Booker.
Yeah, no. So that's a project we've been. It's also on GitHub, and people can look at it. It's all open source and etc. So we had a session in Vegas, which I did together with Louis, who's my buddy who's helping me out with his stuff. He's also very into VMware technology, and he's also a programmer, so that helps when you do scripting, because he thinks in ways that I'm not a developer at all. I just often when I do scripting, it's just to get things done and not necessarily thinking long term or how it's going to scale. And that's helpful when you have somebody that has a programming background, because they think in a bit different way.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. No, developers think very differently. That's
they do.
Yeah. So, no, it's very true. Yeah. I mean, okay. What about the? In my head, what would happen is if you have a hypervisor on top of your physical hardware, you then create VMs that contain hypervisors on top of virtual hardware. In my head, there's quite a large overhead there with regards to but is the hypervisor overhead really quite small, even VM within VM? So actually you still get a fair amount of performance out of it.
It works remarkably well. Of course, you can't do this on a small Intel NUC or a Raspberry Pi or something. You need something bigger with a bit more memory. I would say like maybe 256 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, like a standard ESX host, really.
Exactly, yeah. Basically, just make sure you have maybe an old server around somewhere. It's perfectly fine to just find one piece of hardware that can run ESXi. And after that, it's just it works remarkably well. The VMware products themselves, like NSX and vCenter, they all run directly on top of the physical hardware, and then you address them from within the nested environment. So we don't put everything nested. We have some things outside of the nested environment, but just to with regard to resources and stuff that you might want to do in the nested environment, we want to keep some things out of it. But yeah, it works. It depends on your hardware, of course, and how much you can really do with it. But for me, primarily, it's about doing different things with VMware products, different designs that you want to test out. So yeah.
So it's like you precursored Omniverse, didn't you? Really? So rather than having a actual virtual universe, you've got your virtual ESX environments.
Yep, exactly.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds fascinating. And again, I assume that went down well. I assume that went down well because I assume that's something that actually a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if I can kick off that script from my REST API. Then I can build labs.
Exactly. Yeah. It could be something.
I can start building labs from my home automation system. If someone turns on the ceiling lights in my kitchen, I can provision a lab in my VMware environment by doing that.
Exactly. That will be a very, very nice trigger.
If someone decides to put the oven on and you immediately think, we need a lab for this, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, in this case, probably if the indoor temperature goes below something, fire up a lab. I can use the CPU heat to.
We need an analysis.
The house. Yes,
we can analyze. We can look for I don't know, aliens with SETI at the same time as we're heating the house.
Yeah, sounds very like a plan.
Something like that.
Yeah. So like I said, it's nothing. I mean, there's many people doing this stuff. It's not we're not doing anything special. I think what's a bit unique about it is really we're working on this actively. The two of us, we are trying to maintain it. We're trying to keep it up to date so it works with the latest VMware products. And we really see to that it all fits together. So the whole idea is that you just fire off one command and an hour later you have a lab that you can start working with and do your testing, whatever you want to do. So that's the whole idea behind it. And I
think this is the thing, and I think this goes back to something we talked about with regard to the conferences. It's not so much the fact that there aren't any other ways to do this. It's the fact that you are there and you are available to ask questions about it, and you are available because you're doing this essentially as like a passion project. It's something that you've actually quite enjoyed doing, you quite enjoy working on. So therefore, other people can come to you and go, actually, I really struggle trying to get this to work. Am I doing it right? And you will go, yeah, no worries. You just do this. And at conferences, people will come and talk to you about it and actually have some sort of interaction. And I think you don't get that in IT. We will spend all our time staring at this little square thing in front of us at the moment. At the end of the day, we don't spend much time actually interacting with other people. But being able to talk to the guy who wrote the code and find out his vision is really helpful, I think.
Yeah, and I mentioned it in the previous podcast as well. For me, the community part is a big deal here, right?
Yes.
Of attending these conferences. And I think Rutger's sessions and mine as well were in the kind of community theater scene or the VMware Power Code theater, right? Which isn't the main kind of breakout sessions that are often pretty marketing driven. They are pretty product specific or marketing driven on features and stuff like that. While the code and the community sessions at Explore are people like me and Rutger just wanted to show something we've done or talk about something we're passionate about.
Yeah.
And it being a community thing makes it even kind of the barrier is even smaller, right? Because we're
100%.
Basically one of the other attendees. We just happen to have submitted and been accepted to talk about something we do, right?
Yeah, nice.
And that is a really, really big part of it as well. I mean, on my end, generally speaking, the best sessions are in the community and code theater.
Yeah,
because they haven't been through the whole marketing thing.
Yeah, no, I know. It's a pet hate of mine as well. So yeah.
So where else can I go and present my crazy PowerCLI REST API thing to someone who's actually interested in it? Right?
You could go to YouTube, but nobody would be interested. So it's fine.
No. Speaking of, our sessions are on YouTube, though. They were recorded and are available on YouTube as well, so you can find them there too. So, but yeah, it's small things like this, or bigger things for that matter, but it's other people's experiences. It's other people's kind of what they've actually done that makes those interesting. And those are, for the most part, the really, really good sessions that explore.
Yeah. So essentially, you're open sourcing knowledge on that basis, aren't you? That's the way, because at the end of the day, if you don't do this, you do this, and then everyone else goes, oh, well, actually, that sounds like a really good idea, but could you just change it to do this? And generally speaking, yeah, you guys will do, or at least you'll give them the foundation to then go and make that change themselves, so that that can then be added to the code and then make that code better. It's what the open source community is all about.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's great. It's I think Christian as well. After my session in Vegas, I had several people coming and giving input, and maybe you could do this and that. It's it's so easy. The barrier is so low. Is there's nothing like, I mean, it's I'm just another guy loving the technology. Nothing special about me, but it's just easy to interact with people in the community that way. You can just grab a chair somewhere, work out some idea. It's I really agree with that. The community part of the whole conference basically is what is probably the real deal, more than the official breakout sessions by Broadcom and partners. Yeah,
more than the marketing.
Yeah.
Let's not follow the company
genuine,
line.
right?
It is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a bunch of really, really good community sessions at Explore as well.
Cool.
So that's a really valuable take.
And are they on the internet? All the community sessions on the internet? So at the end of the day, if anyone's interested, worth a look. And I would agree, because I've seen your next one, Christian. So I say, yeah, definitely worth a look, because there's some very interesting stuff out there that you don't expect to exist.
Exactly. So I'll take that as a segue to talk about the next one.
Yeah, go ahead. This is your second session that you did twice, I think, didn't you?
Actually, about a week or a week and a half before Explore Barcelona, I got an email from the community team asking if I would be interested in doing it a second time slot, because the first one was fully booked.
Nice.
Which was both interesting and surprising
and intimidating
at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm missing something. I don't get nervous with things like this, so I'm just there's a deficiency somewhere that I just show up and do my thing.
There's a deficiency.
So doing it twice is fine. My problem with doing a session twice is if I do it twice, it'll be two different sessions.
Because you'll go off on different tangents.
Yeah, I don't script anything, just like this podcast. Right?
I gotta say, we're very familiar with that process. It's fine.
Yeah, I just show up and do it. I use my slide decks as a way of guiding myself through the talk, but I haven't planned how I'm going to phrase something or how I'm going to say something. Right.
So go on, introduce everybody to what was your second session then about?
The second section was called "Beware of the Rogue VMs."
So are they wearing like I don't know, like face masks, like the Wild West sort of situation, or carrying daggers like they're like stealthy people running around?
It's hard to tell because you can't actually see them easily, which is kind of the point. Basically, what I discovered, and this was through someone being attacked and as a cyber intrusion thing. Cyber incident where they got attacked and the perpetrators actually put in VMs on their ESXi hosts that weren't available or weren't visible in the vCenter or in the host client on the ESXi host themselves. So the VMs are able to run. They operate like normal VMs. They exist on the network. They can access resources, but you can actually see them through your normal management interfaces.
So vCenter doesn't show them. The ESX host doesn't show them, and yet they are still running as virtual machines.
Yes.
That doesn't sound good.
No.
Okay. Scary stuff.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of things that need to be in place for this to actually work. One of them is you have to have SSH access to an ESXi host. The other one is you need to have credentials to log into that host, right? So by the time someone has SSH access and root access to your ESXi hosts, security-wise, all bets are off anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. You're not doing well, are you, at that point?
But the thing is, there is a simple command you can run on an ESXi host to start a VM without registering it in the inventory.
Yeah, that's bonkers. That is bonkers because, just as an aside to those who don't know how VMware works, and in a very simple sense, VMs are kind of made up of two files. One called a VMX file that contains like the metadata related to that VM, like how many gigs of RAM, how many CPUs, where the disk file is, all that sort of stuff. And then another file that is the disk file, the VMDK, in the very simplest sense. So really what you normally do is you register your little metadata file with your interface and you say, this is where my disk is, and then you power on the VM, and it uses that to create the world that the VM runs in. So you're saying that you can power on a VM without actually registering any of that information with the ESX host itself?
Yes.
Because that seems very counterintuitive.
So it's really, really simple. I mean, it's a simple command you run. You need to have those files you mentioned placed on an available location, of course. But once you have that, you can run that command and the VM starts, right? And it doesn't show up in your interfaces. So in my presentation, I actually showed this, how you do it, what the command is.
Yeah.
I showed how it looks how it doesn't look really in the management interfaces because you can actually see them. And then I go through how you can use those VMs that know, also go through how you can make them persistent, right? So how you can make those VMs auto start with the ESXi host if you reboot it without basically being visible anyway, but they auto start with the host.
Yeah, because the ESXi host is essentially a baby Linux box, isn't it? So you can
the management system is Linux based, but yeah, that's a different discussion.
Okay.
It's always been
not going to
ESXi is just Linux. It's not, but okay, fair enough. But there's same kind of thing. So what I read this kind of postmortem of the attack that I researched. And I figured out how this was done and I tested it in my lab environment, and it kind of just worked, right? So to expand on that, I decided to set up my own command and control center at home. I used a adversary emulation framework called Sliver.
So you created your own malware system on your home lab?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, good.
Just for demo purposes here, what I did was I run the Sliver command and control system in my home lab environment, protected by my UPS script.
And of course.
And then I had 3 nested ESXi hosts in my ProAct work lab.
Were the nested ESXi hosts created by Rutgers nesting system?
Exactly, of course.
They weren't, but I should have said they were, but they weren't.
Yeah,
but
it's a shame. All right.
But those were running in an entirely different location, different data center. I mean, my home is not a data center, but my lab environment at work is, right? So I spun up 3 nested ESXi hosts, put one of those rogue VMs on each of those hosts, and pointed them back to my command and control center at home that was then available over the internet. So I didn't have any VPN connections or any other direct connection between the networks. And in my demo, I just reboot my ESXi hosts, and in the Sliver console, I can see those rogue VMs just popping up and connecting back to my command and control center, and I can do a reverse shell to them and start running commands.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was, I did that as video demos. I showed the entire thing, how you make them persistent, how you create them, how I can use them in my command and control center. And then I basically rounded it off with how you can identify those VMs, how you can figure out if they're available. So I show the difference between running one of the command line commands on an ESX host that views all or shows you all the running VMs.
Yep.
But that command only shows the running registered VMs. But then there's another command you can run that actually shows the running processes, and there you can identify them there. But let's be honest, how many customers or ESXi managers are going to compare their list of VMs in their vCenter with the output from a command line command utility on one of the hosts and see if there's a mismatch?
But also,
that's not going to happen.
Do you not need SSH enabled on the host to be able to do the VM process list command?
Yes, exactly.
So, right. So even that's not good.
No. So then I just presented some scripts that are available that identify these for you. Basically, they run these commands via PowerCLI and compare the output from vCenter and the hosts and shows you the difference, right? So you can identify them that way. There are a couple of those, and there's this old-fashioned staple of the community tool called RV Tools that also displays these.
Everyone loves a spreadsheet.
It'll show you unregistered VMs that are located on an ESXi data store. So it will identify unregistered VMs. So that's one way you can find.
Oh, right. So it's just looking for VMX and VMDK files and just says, oh, well, this one's not. It doesn't exist.
And
in the
compare it with the inventory and So the funny thing here is I had a problem with, should I call these rogue VMs? Because that's what the guys who made a threat intel report on this called them. They call them rogue VMs. CrowdStrike did their own script to try to identify these, and they call them ghost VMs.
Okay.
Right? Okay. We have rogue VMs, we have ghost VMs, and RV Tools shows them as a possible zombie VM.
Right, okay, we need to get our terminology sorted. I mean, come on, you think from an IT perspective, we're probably all sort of, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons stroke science fiction, so why the hell have we not managed to formulate a standard terminology?
Well, RV Tools is kind of the exception here because their idea of a zombie VM is an unregistered VM. That's something that lays dormant. They don't know that it's running. So that their terminology on this makes sense. But Mitre and CrowdStrike being different in doing ghosts or rogue VMs doesn't make any sense. That should be unified. But yeah, and then I kind of end with mitigation strategies for this. Basically, keep your system patched.
Yeah,
that's number one, right? It doesn't help because in this particular case, but in the original attack, they used Ivanti 0 days to get access to the environment. Then they used a known exploit in vCenter to run a web shell there. And they then enabled SSH on the host from there and went on like that. So if they had patched their system, they wouldn't gotten as far as being able to create those rogue VMs anyway.
Understood.
But the latest versions of everything does still allow you to run this command manually and start those VMs without anyone basically noticing.
That seems like an omission on VMware's part, or is this for what possible reason should this be in there? As a function of that command?
I think there is some residue there from perhaps some system VMs that used to run on a host that you didn't really see by design. Those VCLS VMs that are now a thing are now visible in vCenter and in later versions and stuff like that. But I think this might have been the use case for that, being registered system VMs that VMware needed for management purposes.
Maybe. Yeah, because you used to have...
So it might be a residue from that. Well, hopefully VMware will change that so you won't be able to run a VM without registering it at all, which is kind of the problem here.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you can also you can run containers, right, on directly on ESXi. So this it's going to be interesting to see how they're gonna, if there's going to be any glitch, because these VCLS VMs, that you see all around in your vCenter, they'll be migrated from being VMs to actually running in container runtime. So would be interesting to see if the same glitch is there, if you could actually run containers, rogue containers. But
that's not unlikely, I guess.
Yeah,
we'll see. The second part of my recommendations for protecting against this is, of course, don't enable SSH on your hosts.
Exactly.
It's worth saying that isn't the norm. SSH is off by default.
Yes.
And an ESX host will alert if it's turned on. Yes. At least unless you disable that alarm, which is
exactly. Yeah.
So do not have SSH open. You don't need it. 99.99% of the time, you don't need to have it open. If you do require it, open it when you need it and close it when you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's so easy to write a little PowerShell snippet where you just kind of, you wrap it around. So you open your SSH, you start your SSH service, you just do your thing. And when you're done in the same shell, it will close the service again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So easy.
And it's easy to, and I think you say this in the thing, it's easy then to maybe just check the logs just to make sure that if SSH has been turned on at any point, maybe just get something notifying on that.
That's my kind of third item in the mitigation strategies is actually monitor your logs. It's the shell.log and the auth.log on the ESXi host for these specific events.
Yeah.
And I have them listed there so you can have alerting on that in your log system as well. That way you'll get notified if someone opens an SSH service or actually logs on as well.
But there's no way of running these commands without access to SSH. You can't. PowerShell won't do it. PowerCLI won't do it. There's no other method of running a VMX command on an ESX host without it.
No, there isn't. That isn't available through the APIs. So it's a command line on SSH or direct console connection only.
Interesting. Okay.
And the last part of it is basically enabling secure boot. Secure boot is a way of using the TPM chip in the server to encrypt or kind of ensure that system files aren't tampered with.
I didn't know what that was. That's good.
No, enabling secure boot won't disallow this command from running, but it will make it almost impossible to make sure that the VM auto starts with the ESXi host. You can't make it persistent because secure boot basically disallows you from editing the files that you need to edit to be able to run these scripts. And it won't run all of the scripts either. So that's also a way of protecting against this as a persistent thing. Right?
So at the moment, doing a reboot will stop these ghost clone zombie, rogue, and invisible man VMs running. Yeah. But let's face it, how often do you reboot an ESXi box?
Well, that should only basically depend on how often you patch it.
Yeah, that's true. And
other than that, you shouldn't have to reboot them.
Shouldn't have rebooted at all. Well, I mean, there have been ESXi hosts that have been up. Obviously, this is prior to the point whereby there were serious issues with regard to security. But people have had ESXi hosts running for 3 or 4 years without actually rebooting them, which is that's how reliable they tend to be.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously we live in a different world.
But yeah, that was my the one I ran twice. It was more than fully booked twice.
There was
standing room in the end. So that was really good. I also got lucky enough that one of the kind of main European anti-ransomware on ESXi guys, a Swede, Anders Olsson, actually, he had a 90-minute deep dive on how to secure ESXi against pretty much everything.
Wow.
I was lucky enough that I didn't know that at the time, but he did a shout out to my session, which was after his.
Oh, nice.
And he came up to me after my session as well, which is probably why there was so many people the second time around, because I was a fully packed community session.
Nice. Really nice.
Really nice.
Which was really good of him. I was really happy with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, good.
Really cool.
Impressive. Right, well, guys, there was one other thing we wanted to talk about. Am I right in saying you did a podcast? Was it a podcast or another session?
In Vegas, they asked me for doing like Christian. My session was full. The first one and the second one, I was offered another slot in Vegas for doing it. I did the first one in the community booth, and then there's another booth called the code booth, and they thought that as I'm doing things with Ansible automation, they thought that, hey, why don't you do it in the code booth as well on Friday? The problem was that my plane was departing at the same time around the sessions time, so I couldn't do it, unfortunately. But it's a shame. But
I was lucky enough to be invited on the official VMware podcast, the Virtually Speaking podcast, while I was in Barcelona.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I apologize for mixing that up. But I'm going to say I feel slightly cheated on, to be honest, Christian.
Yeah, you should.
Not acceptable, really.
I
thought we had a relationship that was slightly stronger than that.
Yeah. Well, I've been trying to get one of my colleagues from Norway, Stina, one of my technicians here, onto this podcast. Well, she joined me on the Virtually Speaking one in Barcelona as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
But that was a lot of fun. I mean, she's someone who doesn't stick her neck out the same way I do. She's kind of, she's more down to earth, I guess, or kind of.
That's how we technicians normally are.
Yeah, she's more cautious than I am. So I thought it was a lot of fun to actually pushing her into doing that. She did a really good job at it as well.
And you've scarred her for life, and she never wants to see another podcast again. Is that what we're saying?
It hasn't been released yet. I think it'll be released now pretty soon, probably before this one goes live. So hopefully that'll be available too. But we'll get her on the show as well. No worries.
That'd be nice. We can have her and Rutger back. That'd be good. We can just have a proper geek out VMware session. That would be good.
We can do that. No worries.
It only remains to say thank you very much, Rutger, for your time today. It's been fascinating. So really interesting. And thank you, Christian. And I may never forgive you, but we'll see how that works out.